all was known. You could feel beauty rising.
Hi, my name is Sue Skaski with Vermont Volunteer Services for Animals Humane Society, and welcome to our show For the Animals. Today we have a friend of mine, Tim Conwell, also known as C.W. Wolf, who is a musician and the author of The Unknown Pyp. And Tim, I'm looking at a picture of you right now. What instrument are you playing on the back of this book?
Oh, that's my bamboo flute that I made in West Virginia.
West Virginia?
Yes, when I was down there.
All right, you know what? Then I have to share this. We've known each other for about 20 years.
At
Eli
least,
was just, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, a long time. In addition, Tim is the best computer guru in the state. I'm telling you, everybody, not that I should share him, but you know what? Tim really, and this, you know what? It's true. If you ever need a computer guru, you have to get a hold of Tim. Seriously. I wouldn't know what I'd do without you. But what Tim did for VVSA, how many years ago was that?
Oh, Eli was probably 13 or 14, it was 8 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tim and Eli, his son, went down to West Virginia to help with a horrific animal hoarding case that we actually knew the woman. She was from Vermont and went down there and just started amassing animals, and it was horrible. So Tim and his son went down there in an effort to help clean this up, and
it was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
I have to say that for it. And it was hot.
Hot, and you camped.
Mm-hmm. We camped the whole time we were down there, and it was where I was camping with my friends Steve and Patsy.
Yeah.
That they had a bamboo field.
Yeah.
Next to their garden.
No kidding.
Yeah. They have bamboo growing right there next to their garden.
Wow.
And I walked in and I found a piece of bamboo and I had my hand on it and I said, oh, I think this is a flute. And I picked it up and it wasn't attached to the ground. And
so you made this flute yourself?
at the campfire.
Wow.
Actually, I made it the old way, and I made it with I had a hot piece of steel, and I burned all the holes in it with a hot piece of steel.
It's amazing. And how'd you get it to make, I mean, I know this is a dumb question, but how do you get it to make the music?
Well, the first thing you do is you get the whistle out of it. You burn the whistle so that the whistle works. And that particular one, I just held onto it and decided where the fingers should fall, and I burned the holes and tuned it as I went. One of my favorite songs on my album I recorded with that flute.
I want to put some of the songs on.
Okay, you can do that.
So musician and healer, and you're residing at Heron-Brook Haven in Paulette, Vermont.
That's correct.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so you have to tell me. I was also wondering about your C.W. Wolf, but I know you as Tim Conwell. So who's this?
Well, C.W. Wolf originally came from when I first began to look at wolf and understand a little bit more about wolf. And the name Cloud Walker Wolf came to me.
Wolf as in wolves?
As in wolves, yes.
Okay.
And it was kind of interesting the way it all came about, but I shortened that up to C.W. Wolf when I did my first album, because Tim Conwell just doesn't sound quite right for an artist name, so I chose the C.W. Wolf. Okay.
Yeah. But the book that you wrote most recently is The Unknown Pyp.
Right.
Pyp. And we're just talking about that. How'd that name come to be as PYP?
It came about in a text message where I was writing something about a pup, and it came out Pyp. So I kind of wrote a definition for Pyp as a joke, and believe it or not, that's where the whole
The Unknown Pyp came from.
Right.
I love it. That's so funny.
There was actually many of the names in the book came from typos. So,
is that before spell check?
Well, not necessarily. There's no spell check on instant messaging, or there wasn't then.
Okay.
So, I wrote the book. I think I started it about 5 years ago, and I just finally got around to editing it and getting it out there.
And you self-published.
So, yes, I did.
This is such a wonderful book, too.
Thank you.
Wow.
So you did read it?
I did read it. It's an easy read, too. It's very enjoyable.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
So what is a Pyp?
A pip is a shapeshifter of sorts. Originally, the pips were usually in wolf form, which is where the wolf comes about in here. But due to the oppression of man, they had to take human form in order to kind of hide from the oppression.
Okay, now what was it that you said?
I said a shapeshifter.
What is that?
A shapeshifter is something that can change from one form to another, or at least you can see it in one form or another.
Give me an example.
Boy, that's a tough one. An example of a shapeshifter. In the spiritual realm, when you see a spirit sometimes, you can see it change from a face to another face and possibly to an animal and so. And that's shape-shifting in its own form.
Different faces of the soul? Is that what you're...
It's still the same spirit, but it's how it's seen by others.
How it's perceived?
Right.
Okay,
So,
that I can understand.
Right.
Very interesting. So when did you first discover your interest in wolves?
Well, I think it was in probably the first time was right around 99 or 2000, and I remember I thought I was nuts because I was out and I was feeding the wood furnace, and I'd been laid up with sciatica, and I was finally able to get back out, and it was a really cold night, and I went out and the moon was out, and I put wood in the furnace, and I stood there and I was just kind of staring at the moon, and I felt my hand kind of raise up, and I said, and I looked down and I said, oh, well, there's a wolf standing there under my hand, and I thought, that's kind of a nice thing to imagine, and I looked away and I felt it move, and I looked back down and I took my glove off and I put my hand in the fur and I said, okay, this is really a wolf, and it turned and looked at me and looked away and walked away.
This is at Killington?
In Killington.
Tim, I didn't know this.
Well, I don't tell a lot of people, and I'll
Well,
tell you.
you just have now.
The thing that was so amazing about it was I didn't tell anyone for a week or so. And my neighbor across the road came to me one day and he said, have you seen that white wolf that's around here? And I finally realized, okay, it was really there. So I got really interested in wolves. I volunteered for a while at the sanctuary that was here in White River, and I got to know Micah at the sanctuary, and it was one of those things where the first time he looked at me, we connected. And from then I just wanted to know everything about wolves. And
go back to your night with the wolf for a second. So you had your hand on him. How long did he stay with you?
It seemed like a very long time. I know it was probably only a minute altogether, but I never knew he was coming up. I never realized he was there, but I felt my hand move, and I didn't really think much about it because I was just kind of staring off into space and enjoying the real quiet night. It was one of those nights when you have all the little sparkles on the snow.
Yeah.
I was just really enjoying being able to get outside and all that. And shortly after that, I had several dreams about wolves, too. Actually, I had done some writing before, a little bit of writing about wolves from that experience.
Did you have any fear?
The strangest thing was I had no fear at all that time. I was so convinced that it wasn't real that, okay, well, maybe it's the medication, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's that. And it wasn't until I took my hand off and I actually put my hand in the fur and I said, okay, it's really here, and it looked at me, that I kind of went, okay, what do I do now?
And what did you do?
I stood there, and it turned and looked at me, just turned its head and looked at me and looked away again and walked off.
Oh, Tim, how exciting, how spiritual. I love it.
So that's how wolf came to me the first time around. So I've always been a wolf advocate since then. I studied a lot on them. And
I know whenever I see anything come over on email, you're the first about wolves. You're the first one I think to send it on to. So what are the connection between humans and wolves in the book?
Well, Man, of course, has decided that wolves are no good.
Mm.
Wolves are a threat. So I look at wolves as being oppressed by man. And although, as I was writing the book, none of that really entered my thoughts directly, the book turns out to be the Pyp's battle against oppression.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of connections. If you look at oppression in any form, the wolf is a great example.
Yeah. Is this the first book that you've ever written about wolves?
Actually, no.
Or about animals in general, I should say?
Actually, I have one that I wrote and then shelved. And then this one started coming, and I just had to go at this. The first one was actually more of a realistic story, and it went through. It started with a man sitting at his computer, and he was working on a bunch of stuff, and he heard a door slam out in the yard, and he looked out the window and saw a truck driving away, and there was a crate in the yard, and in the yard was a wolf pup.
Yeah.
That book goes on to him raising this pup along with several others out in the wilderness to return them to the wild. And I do want to get back to that one at some point and just go through and read it again at least and find out. But Wolf to me was the first real awakening of my spirituality.
So is that how wolf has become part of your life?
Absolutely. I really, for a long time, I was really almost obsessed with everything that was happening with the wolves.
How about a moth? What's a moth bringing us?
Moth to a flame. I don't know.
Moth to a flame. Okay, I've got to check. We had Jana on with animal medicine. I've got to find out what moths mean.
See what the moth means. Well, the moth is a night creature.
Okay.
It's attracted to light.
Okay.
So it could be a lot of
What are we
different
getting
things.
out of that? Speaking of, I'm looking at that around your neck. What is that? It looks like a tooth.
This is a wolf tooth. It's a very, very old wolf tooth. This was from the time when wolves were pretty common in the United States, back before they were, absolutely. Back before they were pretty well eliminated. I found this through someone whose great-grandfather had traded with the Native Americans, and this was one of the items that he had received in trade.
Wow.
So, and I kind of wanted a wolf tooth, but I didn't really think about going out and getting one, and this one just kind of appeared, and I said, oh, that's the way I want to get it, right? So, yeah.
Okay. Are there more packs of wolves or pips that interact?
Oh, yeah. There's several, I call them clans. And there's several clans from different areas. And those were fixed clans. Of course, most of those in the beginning of the book have been eliminated. By man. So as you go through the book, you'll discover that there's a lot of interactions between other clans. For instance, there's a clan that's a nomadic clan that comes through and teaches certain lessons to the lead character in here. And it's interesting the way that all of the animals actually interact in the book. I'm thinking that probably one of the points that the book tries to make is that in nature, everything is in harmony, and it's only when it's disturbed that you have to do something about it.
Well, the Garden of Eden.
Right.
So every story has a moral. What do you think the moral of this story is?
Oh, well, seeing as this is the first book in the series, it's kind of hard to say.
Oh, good. It's going to be a series?
Yes.
I've
started the second
Okay.
one. So I think that the moral of this book in particular is that there are ways peacefully to coexist and ways peacefully to fight a battle to get yourself back on equal ground. I believe thoroughly that we are all created equally, and that means animals and your ants, your creepy crawlies, the flowers and everything. We're all a part of a much bigger picture, and without one another, we'd be out of balance.
Yeah. The cat's life is as important to the cat as ours is to us, and the pig to the pig, and the butterfly to the butterfly.
Absolutely.
People just still have to get that.
And a lot of people don't realize just how much we depend on all the other parts.
I know.
And they depend on us.
So, in the foreword of the book, you mentioned that the book parallels the oppression of wolves. How so?
Well, if you look at what has happened to the wolves over the years, back in the late 1800s and when they were just slaughtering wolves everywhere they could possibly find them,
right?
The similar thing has happened to the pips. Okay, and that's the ultimate form of oppression, is to knock something out completely. As you go through the book, you find that wolves are returning, okay, just as the pips are returning in the book. There's so many forms of oppression. If you look at the small tribes in places that are just taken over by governments, for them to come back, they need to get back to their roots, and they need to show people that there's more than one way to do this. So yeah, it's definitely. Well, you've read it, so you understand.
Wolves have a tough road. I mean, in the past few years, I know they've allowed aerial hunting of wolves. I mean, you see Sarah Palin with this most gleeful look on her face, shooting, and it looks like she's shooting German shepherds. Swooping down on them, and it's so heart-wrenching. It is.
They've also. I've followed Defenders of Wildlife for a long time because I am quite a wolf advocate, and they're thinking about doing the same thing with some of the Yellowstone wolves and some of the wolves in Idaho and Montana and And there's so much legislation out there now that's just being thrown away. All the Endangered Species Acts and things against wolves are being rewritten, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a political move. You keep the people who have the most money in the area the happiest, and that's what it's all about. So that in itself is just.
So how do you do battle? How do you go up against that, Tim?
You have to do it very quietly. You have to do it quietly, and you have to do it in a peaceful manner. If you go out there and you raise all kinds of ruckus and you get all ugly and nasty about it and stuff, they're just going to get uglier and nastier about it. So the only way you can really do it is to go in there and to educate people. And that's one of the things that I hope this book will do. I hope it'll educate people that we are very similar to wolves. We have a common structure. We have a clan structure. We have our tribes. We have all these different things, just like the wolves do.
They're so intelligent.
And they belong here. We weren't here originally. They were here before us. And when you take that away, you lose a lot of other things. You look at the differences. There was a study done recently in parts of Yellowstone where the wolves were reintroduced, and in other parts where they kept the wolves away. And the ecology of the natural environment in those areas was so much more diversified and so much stronger where the wolves were than where they weren't. When you take a predator out of the balance, then you'll have 4,000 beavers damming up streams.
Yep, I understand.
You'll have all these other things. And it skews the balance.
Okay.
If you let it go, it'll even out. There's I'm not sure where it is, but I believe it's called Isle Royal, where the only two inhabitants really of the island are wolves and moose, and it's an island. It's a closed ecosystem to itself. And they've studied it for many, many years, and for a couple of years the population of moose go up, and then for a couple of years the population of wolves go up. But they always come back into balance. They've never, because they depend on each other.
It's just when man steps in.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when you put that into the equation and you put them down, you're creating more problems for yourself.
Yeah. So tell me, was there one wolf that really touched your life?
Yeah, I would say Micah was probably the first real encounter I had with a wolf that just, when our eyes met, it felt like somehow he was a part of me, and I understood where he was coming from. And like, it was interesting because I understand that he didn't react to other people the way he reacted to me at the sanctuary. When I came to the sanctuary, he always reacted to me a little differently, and he'd watch me, and he'd come closer. And with everyone else, when other people would show up, he'd disappear. So that was pretty amazing.
You
and
just
I got
had animal magnetism.
I have some wonderful photos that I took years ago of
Yeah.
him too. So
Beautiful golden eyes.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. We've had a lot of people. Well, I know, I'm going to say maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was a big deal about wolf hybrids. And I know how many were bred, and people just have no idea.
They don't.
You know, this is not a creature that belongs caged, that belongs as a family. Well, talk about it.
Wolf hybrids became very popular, almost 20 years ago. They really started cropping up more and more. And a lot of people have an attraction to wolves. Wolves are very mysterious, and wolves are very powerful animals and all. And people decided that, we can't have wolves, but maybe we could have a half wolf. And what they forget is that even if it's half wolf, it's still half wolf.
Right, and still has needs.
Right.
Right.
And wolves carry so much instinct with them that it's really hard for them to fit directly in with man. If you look at the difference, for instance, between wolves and coyotes, coyotes have adapted so that they'll come right up and they'll go in the chicken coop and get chickens. Wolves will stay away from man as much as they can. If you're walking out through the woods and there's coyotes there, you'll see them. If you're walking out through the woods and there's wolves there, you'll never see them. They'll disappear.
Are they nocturnal?
Semi-nocturnal. Wolves hunt at night when their light is good. Coyotes also hunt at night when the light is good. And the main reason is we don't see them, and they come out at night because people aren't around at night. So that's the biggest difference, it's to avoid the people more than anything else. In that island I was telling you about, they're very active all day long. In Yellowstone, where they have very little interaction with man, they're active all day long. It's only in areas where there's a population or where there's people around that they tend to be more nocturnal.
So is there a threat of wolves really with people? I know I've always heard, farmers, we don't want wolves, blah, blah, blah.
If you look at the persecution of the wolf with the stories like Little Red Riding Hood and all of these, the wolf has always been made out to be the bad guy. Everybody's supposed to be afraid of this big bad wolf. And as far as I'm concerned, that was a political position to get rid of the wolves. Because the more people you can get to hate them, the more people are going to say, they're bad, they're bad. So as the wolves became more accepted to certain people, more mysterious and they started breeding them as wolf and dog combination, they became something that people could say, I can have a wolf this way. I myself think that wolves are better left wolves and dogs are better left dogs.
I couldn't agree with you more.
When you combine the two, you're asking for trouble. You really are. And even with the best intentions.
And even their natural habitat, Tim.
That's right, because what is their natural habitat now? They're half wolf,
Right.
and they're half dog. Do they live with man, or do they live away from man?
Yeah, and a wolf in the wild. Do you know offhand what his territory is?
I don't know offhand, but I've heard depending on the size of the pack that varies. Some packs in the wild, for instance, in Yellowstone, it can be a 70-mile range or so.
Wow.
They need a lot of space.
And how long do they usually live?
Wolves in the wild live considerably less than they do in a zoo situation or something like that. There's a lot of inherent dangers for a wolf in the wild. When you're hunting larger prey and the like, you can get kicked and injured. You can get in a fight with another wolf. You can get in all these things. Generally speaking, from what I understand, in the wild you can expect 5 or 6 years, where in captivity they'll live up to 10, 12 years.
Is that all, 5 to 6 years?
Yeah, that's about the average. That's
Wow.
about the average for a wolf. Well, you think where they live and where they've been forced to live now, there's very little hospitable territory that they live in.
Well,
now.
we are encroaching left and right on wildlife habitat.
I've heard that the Mexican wolves, which are dwindling very quickly, have also been living a little longer, but there's so many fewer of them now.
That's so sad to think, because think about the dog. I mean, we're lucky. We have our dog companions with us 10, 13, 14, 15 years if we're really lucky.
Well, and they're cared for constantly. They're in a environment where they're always taken care of.
Yeah.
Where a wolf is taking care of itself and the others in the pack.
Oh.
So, it's a big difference too. For instance, if you're the caregiver or the care receiver.
How often do they mate? Do you know their families?
The alpha male and alpha female, depending on the hunting conditions and how well the pack is, how large the pack is, and all, is once a year to every 3 years.
And do they stay together to raise the pups?
The whole pack takes care of the pups, which is really interesting. The pack community is so much more like man than people realize.
Yeah.
And they actually go further a lot of times. There's been cases, I understand, that pups have actually, or wolves that have actually lost their pups have gone through and taken care of other pups. So they'll adopt.
You have some beautiful photographs on your website
Thank you.
of wolves.
Mm-hmm.
We should put some up.
Well, we can do that.
Let's do that.
We can do that.
Okay, so where can we find out more about the unknown pup?
The
How do we,
unknown
Pip, typo.
I have a website, cwwolf.com,
Okay,
and that's where I put my links to the book and the links to my artwork.
and can I get the music there too?
Absolutely.
I
My
love the
album
music,
is available
Tim.
there. And I'm hoping to, my next project before I go any further on the second book is going to be my second album, because I've had so many requests.
Yeah.
I have to get that out first.
It is beautiful music.
Well, thank you.
Wow. Okay, so if you go to our website, vvsahs.org, we'll put you in touch with Tim. But Tim Conwell, also known as CW Wolf, check out his information that you can find either through Heron Brookhaven or The Unknown Pyp.
And if you look real hard, you can find me on Facebook.
Okay, there you go. Thanks, Tim. And
Okay.
thank you very much for watching For the Animals.
At dusk, there came a turning. There was a moment when all was known. you could feel beauty rising on the breeze that shapes the stone, and I would ride upon the breeze that shapes the stone across the sky and